Good evening. Thanks everyone for joining us. Tonight we're going to have our discussion on the changes to our organizational structure of the Maryland Forward Party and hear from each of the different committees their action plans for this year. And Pete, can we go to the agenda? So we'll start, and I'll turn it over to Pete in just a moment to go through the organizational changes, and then we'll go to each committee, what their role is and what some of their plans are, and go through that. I want to stop when Pete finishes his introduction for some Q&A at that point, and then I'd like to go through all the committees and not break for questions of each one, but just ask you to hold your questions so that we can have a good question and answer session, because some of these things interrelate as part of that. If folks want to ask questions, two best ways to do that. At the bottom of your screen, there's a hand that says raise your hand you want to, and we'll be tracking that. And when we see that, we'll find a break and have you ask that question. If that isn't working for you or you prefer, you can put a question into chat. I'll be monitoring that as well and bringing those questions in. So with that, Pete, turn it over to you.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about what we're doing in 2026. I'm going to give you a little bit of a background of kind of how we got to where we are. If you have not been around or seen it or haven't been checking in a little while, and it will lead us to why we are taking the approach that we are, and then we'll get into the committees and how we have set up and organized ourselves. So we got started back in 2023, and we were learning as we go to get this thing stood up. We did a lot of events. We collected a lot of different signatures. We got a lot of different feedback from the various different groups that we were there to get into. And we got into this place where people kept asking us, what's your platform? What's your platform? What's a platform? What you stand for? And one of the things that we ended up not really being able to settle was that even amongst us in the board of where we were working, there was a wide variety of our opinions about what should be part of it, what should not be part of it. And so what we opted to do instead was to do what we called a value-based approach. And that resulted in writing up a pledge for candidates and for ourselves that allowed us to express this in language that would be accessible to everybody inside of Maryland, because we really wanted to be part of something inside of, that was on Maryland. So we let that lead us into some different thoughts or different things that we wanted to do. And if you were around at this time in 2024, you may have noticed that we did three things at the same time. Kind of ran three experiments. And one of them was to not support Trump, but to also not support RFK. Because we had gone through the whole thing that Andrew Yang would laid out with not being a spoiler in the presidential election. So we thought this was going to be a home run position to take. We also, and many people don't know this, so Larry Hogan actually approached us for endorsement in 2024. And we had some thoughts about that. And we had some conversations back and forth on what we should do and how that should come about. And we recognized, we did some research, we did some soul searching, and we found out that according to the prominent poll data out there, the Senate was going to flip red. At the time, most people didn't know that, but that was something that has now borne out, and we know that happened. And so we realized that there was a position that we could take, which was to try to position Larry Hogan as we call it the next John McCain. Someone who would make choices based upon principle. It's one of the things that he said that he was willing to do. And that when it really came down to it and the Constitution might be at a point of, something happening that was not going to match with, law and the Constitution, that he would step forward, build a coalition, pull off enough votes from the Republican majority in order to stop the things that should not go through. And the third thing that we were doing as a simultaneous experiment here was that we were approached about a ballot initiative in Baltimore. And they asked us to join a coalition, but we kind of didn't know what the ballot initiative meant. And so we realized that a lot of people did not. And so what we did instead was we held a debate, and we created an informational educational session and ran that during the same period of time. And so that was our experiments for 2024 during the election cycle. And this is pretty much what happened. So we had 2 epic fails and 1 win out of this. And the first epic fail that we weren't expecting was the amount of pushback we got on not supporting RFK, or in explicitly coming out and saying, do not support RFK. Because there's a lot of people at that point. This was before he had exited from the race and had joined and gotten his cabinet post. And so there was a lot of speculation about what RFK would do in that race. And so we paid a price for taking the stance that we did. And we also paid a price for Hogan because we were not actually able to take that strategy and implement it. And we came to this realization that it doesn't matter how good the strategy is if you can't follow through and execute on it. So that just got us into this space. But we did have this 1 win, which was the reaction to our educational debate process during that same thing. Really put us in this place where multiple party coalitions were looking to us, or starting to look to us, as to be able to build bridges and break these things apart and understand where things are. And so that became a thing that we realized, that how we do something is more important than doing the right thing. And not that we don't want to do the right thing, but there's going to be some things that we just can't execute on. And it's better to put our time and attention towards the things that we can have an influence on. So that got us into this position of learning of, what if we make a policy choice and it backfires on us? How will we know if that's the right thing to do or not the right thing to do? We also learned that there are a variety of different pigeonhole words, trigger words that people are using. If we use the words life, choice, DEI, freedom, this is things that are going to spark reactions in other people. There's a research done by these folks, Kahneman and Tversky, which shows that most of what we do is reaction on emotions. And there's a part of our brain that pushes on this. And so we wanted to look for a way to turn the emotions off and turn the logic on. How could we do this? Could we change the way that we were having this? And that was one of the things that we discovered in that educational debate session that we were doing, is that we were able to get through that out of the emotional space and into a logical collaboration space. It was kind of fun to watch that about 15, for the first 15 minutes, people were just lobbing things like every other debate and taking jabs at each other. And then about 30 minutes in, they started saying things like, well, I don't agree with you on that point, but I do agree with you on this point, and this is what we need to do. And then by the time we got to about an hour in, and for the last 30 minutes, they were going back and forth and actually collaborating on designing what should be the next ballot initiative that we put up 2 years from now. And so that's where we were getting into, we have this ability to affect policy and change through debate and through education, because of the way we look at this space and the way we look at the world. And so this other phrase kind of came up that, we agree mostly on the problems of what we're doing, but we disagree on the priority of solving those problems. And we disagree on what solutions we want to implement, because we are very different. We think that we are in a single state, and most of the world outside of us looks at us as a democratic state, but we are very gerrymandered, and we have ocean culture, we have a downtown culture, we have mountain culture, we have suburbs, we have a tech corridor, we have universities, rivers, farmlands, historic areas. We are very diverse, even just within our area. So this is a bit of a summary of how we approach things. So we start by listening to the community and identifying how people are being affected. We do these prioritization of problems to understand, what do we want to see go away with whatever action that we take. Then we test multiple solutions on this to see what can we actually do and what can't we do, which ones are actually going to work. That brings in the ability to test data on this, but we're not just testing, are we right? It's very important to use scientific method and talk about what are we getting wrong, And also, are we doing something that's actually irrelevant to the outcome? And when we look at all three aspects of that data, we get a better definition of playbooks that we can share not only between the counties, but that we can share across states in other different, with other different chapters of Forward. So into 25, we did more of these things. And we did a whole series of prioritized problems debates. And we did more local things, and we started getting pulled into these local conversations. And we started getting asked to host different things. So we have moved over to this place where we are doing everything now as an experiment, so that we can set things up and test this out and see where it goes. And we're really focusing very local. So local communities, local partners, local candidates. And the result of this has actually been really good. So we've come into a position where we are now seen as leaders of multi-party coalition within the state of Maryland. We've been able to use that together, not by ourselves, but in combination with other groups like RCV Maryland. We've passed RCV inside of Greenbelt, the city of Greenbelt. And looking back, it looks like the city of Greenbelt, when they came to our table at the Greenbelt Day, that was where they first learned about RCV. And then we introduced them to RCV Maryland. And from there, it took off for that, and took us, about 2 years to turn it around. But now we've passed it through. And so now we have a city that now runs RCV. So when we focus on local, we can do some really great, amazing things. And we've actually been invited to work with delegates to write legislation that has gone before the House to be voted on. And we were very proud of that, to be able to be involved in discussing these things, that even if we don't have a party line, even if we don't have party status yet, we still have the ability to affect Maryland and have an outcome on this when we really focus on what we can do and how the impacts are that we can have. And we're at this point now where we have so many people coming up to us now asking for endorsements as candidates. The biggest problem for us has been in 2026 is getting through all of the applications. So that's a really good spot to be in. And so the next thing that we're really focusing on is, how do we get to this party status? There's a lot of people who would like to run on a Forward line, and we need a party to be able to do that. And so that's one of the experiments we're taking through into the next section. And so we kind of noticed that we have these functions and these ways that we add value into the community. One, we are taking community action and getting things done inside the community. We are working with different candidates and finding good candidates. We're kind of a seal of approval for independents and folks of like, these are not the corrupt people. We are able to do advocacy for legislative things that are happening, and we are working on building up the party. And at the same time, we've discovered that there's certain things that are crossing over all of those different committees and work, and that's comms. And so the communications has to be fairly consistent. And so we have a committee that is devoted just to communications. And we also have a committee that's devoted to operations, and another one that's devoted to volunteer. And each one of those things supports the 4 different committees that are over on the right. And they give us a consistent foundation across all the different things that we're doing. And so you can see that there's some of the list of this ownership down below. It helps us to keep sorted as to which committee is responsible for which portion of the work that we have to do. And you can probably tell from bullets here, there's a lot of work that we have to do. And so we wanted to present this to you. We're going to use this as the framework after we do the Q&A to show you what's happening inside of Maryland Forward. And if you see something in this area that you're like, oh, I like that, I'd like to be involved in that section, then we'll give you the opportunity to join in and find out a little bit more about how that portion works. All right, I didn't want to do too much more here at the beginning here, so I'll pass it back over to you, Bill, if you want to lead a Q&A to find, if there's any questions that people have about how we got to where we are and sort of what our structure is currently. You're on mute, Bill.
Yeah, I think this is a good place to pause. We don't have any hands up, and I don't see questions in chat yet, but just open it up to folks if they have any thoughts, questions about this. We're going to go to each of the committees and hear from the leadership of that committee some thoughts they have. But before we jump in, just if any folks have some questions or thoughts, we'll pause a second. All right, then let's go ahead and move forward, Pete.
All right. So we're going to kick it off with the communications committee. So they're responsible for a lot of these things that you see up here. You know, it's our branding, our marketing approach, managing our social networks and our newsletter, and responsible for various different parts of data. So, Courtney, are you there? Did you want to hop in and tell us a little bit more about comms?
Yeah, I am here. Thank you. And thank you for explaining a little bit about it. So my name is Courtney Hart, and I am one of the co-chairs of the Communications Committee. Can you go to the next slide? Sorry. Thank you. I'm one of the co-chairs of the Communications Committee with Matt Sampson. Unfortunately, he could not be here, but he is very active and part of the team. So I'll start by giving a little bit of quick updates about where we are now, and then I'll share a little bit about our goals and the help that we're looking for. So updates about us, like I said, Matt and I are now co-chairs. We are really grateful that PJ, who has led the Communications Committee for a very long time, is helping us with that transition, sharing lots of wisdom and supporting us as we start to build some organization within our committee that can help support the creativity of our volunteers. So our team is continuing to grow in size and, like I said, in creativity. If you've seen us online, we've had some really unique things come out lately. We've had some volunteers who've been able to help us with making some graphics using AI generation. We've had some pop culture intertwined calls to action to invite us to learn more about Maryland Forward Party, and lots of other great things that have come out there. And we're excited to build a cohesive place where our volunteers, even though we have different schedules and we have different availability, different interests, that we can all work as a team together, but still explore our own individuality in supporting communications. So with that, looking towards the remainder of 2026, we have a few goals that we're working towards. One is increasing our reach and our engagement, so both online and in the community, which I'll talk more about the community in just a moment. But online, we're looking to create more connections, authentic connections. We know that there's an opportunity to connect with a new audience out there who doesn't know much about us. We know people spend a lot of time on their phones scrolling. And so we're working hard to create a strategy that's sustainable and provides an opportunity for that increased reach, and to educate our followers on what Maryland Forward Party is about, what is happening locally in the community that could impact them. With our legislative session that just passed, we spent some time educating people on what kind of bills we were supporting and why. With endorsements, we've moved on to educating our followers on that now too. So those are some of the things we're going to continue to work on throughout the year. And again, building that structure and strategy, we're really lucky to have some volunteers who are going to help us have a more data-driven approach. So that will hopefully help us with those goals. Another goal that we are working steadily on is trying to improve brand recognition. So as part of the Communications Committee, we want to make sure that when people see the stuff that we're putting out, that they know that it's Maryland Forward Party, that they start to recognize our colors, that they start to recognize even our fonts, our styles of icons, all kinds of things. We want them to know, like, we're here, we're a cohesive group. And if it's getting put out in Washington County, if it's getting put out in Worcester County, wherever it is, like, we are all still one, even though everything is so local and individualized. So we're working hard to firm that up to help make sure that our teams are able to access that information when they need it and support them on that. And we're also working hard to, sorry, I just saw something pop up. We're also working hard to help with messaging. So we're looking at the messaging on our website right now. We have some really great people on our team that are supporting us with understanding how to communicate more accessibly, communicate more clearly what we're building here as a party, and make sure that people can understand what it is that we're working on. So we want them to be able to go there and say, like, wow, look, we see it in the colors and the style, but now we also understand it and we get what they're doing and we want to be a part of this. So that's something we're working really hard on. And then the last goal there, going back to building and expanding our reach in the community, is that we're collaborating with all the committees. So communications isn't just its own committee that does its own thing, that says this is how we're going to do things. We really are here to support the work that the party is doing. So we are focused on, like I said earlier, educating our followers about what work is happening, what's going on, updates for that, promoting events, helping our committees be able to even create their own promotion materials so that they feel comfortable with that. We're supporting with announcing endorsements for our candidates committee, and then reviewing any content as it comes along if committees are asking for that support. So those are our 3 main goals that we're working on this year. And if you're interested in getting involved, even if you're not interested in getting involved in the committee, the number one best thing that you could do for us to support us is to go follow us on social media. So I'm going to make a shameless plug for that right now. Please follow us, share, like, because it really is important in the algorithms, or our stuff just disappears away. But if you're interested in getting involved with the committee, we could really use your help. And we are really open to all the different things that people may want to do. So if you like to write, edit, record, create content, if you have thoughts on design, if you're more of a data person and you want to help us with looking at that, or you like just being on social media and you like engaging, we could use that help too. So that's us. That's what we're working on. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them later on when we have Q&A. And I will put the social media links in the chat. That's a great idea. Thank you.
All right, good idea. All right, we have, next up is operations and finance, which happens to be run by myself and Matt Byers. And so we are responsible for things like the bank accounts, legal compliance, but also the running of our websites, functionality, the software, the IT, as well as all the security concerns behind that. And so one of the things that we were working on is migration of the website over to a new platform based on the Wix, because what we wanted was to have the ability for people to be able to help in the editing of it. In the previous platform that we had been on, the only way that you could support help for the website, you had to be a coder. And you had to be able to code in, I think it was just JavaScript language. That was like the only option that we had. And so it limited the number of people that could help us to build things. And so when we made this new migration over to the new site, while also doing a nice new graphic design and layout of website at the same time, what we did was we created a space through technology where anybody can go in and who's part of the volunteer base and create events. And anybody could go in and they could paste in or create some content and write something for our newsletter, and anybody can go in from like the candidates group, who we're going to hear from in just a little bit, and post up new candidates. And it doesn't require somebody from the IT side of the house in order to make that happen. And so what we're doing next is we're looking to make the same migration for our newsletter. And so we are working on some scripts right now that are allowing us to do synchronization between the platforms, because we still need to use some reporting to work with the national forward party so that we can send our data back up to them. And as that they get new recruits and send them down to us, we need to make sure all of that synchronizes together into one place. So to that end, and partially for other reasons as well, we have launched a new thing called Code Forward. If anybody has been around back in the day, there was Code for America. Actually, Code for America still exists, and they're doing a lot of good things. That eventually became Civic Tech, and so there was like a Code for DC. There was Code for Maryland for a little bit. And that became a Civic Tech DC, and across the various different states, there was these places where people would just get together on occasional basis, once a week or once every other week. And you would just bring a project that you're working on, or you could join up and work on somebody else's project. And we would just build these things together that just helped our community. It was a great sort of model. And so we were saying, why couldn't we do this ourselves through Forward? And so that was the launch of this. And so we've had 2 sessions so far. Our 3rd meetup is going to be coming up on April 6th. They basically run every other week. We've got some people who have been joining us here for Code Forward. So I see Julian's here on the call, and Matt's there as well, in addition to myself. And so Julian, for example, helped us get set up on GitHub. And he also had been part of Code for America, Code for DC, and these other networks previously. And so we are really building this new approach or idea. And we've chosen a couple apps that we want to work on first. One is to take the debates that we've been doing and be able to scale them by building a mobile app to run them. And we also want, there's a difficulty in the Maryland law about connecting signatures, and we think we can use some technology to overcome that. So if you are a coder, if you are a UI designer, you don't even have to know how to code. There are many different ways that you can contribute into creating something. So you could be a graphic designer, make some images. You could do front-end code, middle-end code, database code. We could use all kinds of help. So please come and help and join us. And then I just want to give a little, sort of breakdown over here on the right here of an experiment that we've been running. Because we don't just do one thing, as I mentioned, we do multiple things. And so in order to make us more secure in what we're doing, we've been going through this list of various different approaches to try them out, see how they work, see what doesn't work, most importantly. And that's kind of how we're approaching everything, is to see what is the best thing for us, not just what is something that we could do, but what makes the most sense for our organization. All right, next up, volunteer.
Thanks, Pete. So Bill Stewart, and I'm responsible for our volunteer organization. And our focus for a long time has been on bringing more volunteers in. But as we've grown and matured, it's now helping them get into the right role, providing some basic training to get them started, and build an asset that helps all the other committees get what they need as part of that. So next slide. So 18 months ago, we had 20 folks involved trying to make things happen. And a lot of us wearing 3 and 4 hats to try to do that. Today we have 75. So we've more than tripled in 18 months. And the activity continues. We probably are getting anywhere from 2 to 4 new volunteers every month. And my suspicion is that around November and the midterm elections, a whole lot of people will be even more upset with what's going on and want to investigate alternatives. And we certainly had a surge after the small 2025 election, as well as the 2024. So that's going to continue to help us as part of that. I have 5 folks working with me, 3 kind of focused on the new volunteers, getting them in a position. And Mike Norris has just joined. Mike's here on the meeting, and he's going to help us follow the same approach that Courtney talked about. We're there to support and help all the committees. So Mike's going to be, listening to what those committees need, telling them what we're doing, hearing what they need, and feeding that back to us. So we've got that kind of coordination as part of this. With the new volunteers we have coming in, we're going to be doing a 90-minute boot camp, just whole training on a lot of different things related to the Forward Party to help them get started. And again, each time we get a group of new volunteers, we'll do that again as part of that. So lots of activity going on. As we get bigger and as we ramp up, we need more and more folks to be able to support the kind of organization we need to be to attract significant members and function as a major political party. And the volunteers are going to do that for us. So, and any folks who'd like to get involved and help with this, glad to talk with you and get you more involved. And I'll be talking a little bit more about that at the end of the meeting as well. So back to you, Pete.
Thank you, Bill. Okay, so those were our system-wide support teams, the ones that are crossing over multiple different areas. So now let's look at our community engagement teams. And we're going to start with community action. So they are responsible for our partnerships, working with the various different counties that are out there, our clubs that we're working on, as well as coordinating our events. So BJ, take it away.
Yeah, and the community action team, working with Laura, one of our board members. Laura is also wearing lots of hats these days. We are trying to get to this community up approach for Forward Party. This does not want to be a top-down. We're very intentionally moving away from a top-down, one-size-fits-all solution-based group. That's what we're seeing right now with the Democratic Party and what we're seeing with the Republican Party, and it's not actually working. We actually see the policy platform as a model that's actually not serving our communities very effectively. What we think we want to do is start to establish what are the real issues important within our communities. And we only know that when we go into these communities and we start asking those questions and we start listening. So what we are really going to be doing is working with our local county teams. We're building statewide groups based around common interest or identities. The first of those that's forming up right now, and I think we have about 7 people in the leadership team, is our Black Voters Forward Community Group. We look to establish a statewide women's group, seniors group, and veterans group in the next coming months. And we're working with these teams, these either statewide community groups, local clubs as they start to form up, and our local county-wide teams. We're going to be providing mentorship, guidance, and feedback and resources as those teams need. We want to help kind of guide these teams, expand the network by cross-connecting these teams together, so that we might have a county team working with a statewide community group and also our legislative affairs team, all kind of collaborating on an initiative together. Maybe that's hosting an event. Maybe that's a signature collection for a petition on a piece of legislation. Those are the types of problems we're going to want to be solving along the way. And as we do this, we want to be able to help our teams establish achievable outcomes and provide real value along the way. We want to move away from just talking and campaigning on these issues and really focus on solving issues along the way. And finally, we want to be able to identify early on, track and monitor and foster leadership horizontally across the organization, so that we are filling in kind of this community up approach. That's really kind of what this group is doing. It's very much breadcrumbs between a lot of the different groups around the organization.
All right. Thank you, PJ. Next up is candidates. So this is led by Dave Allsbach. So they are responsible for, of course, working with our candidates or people who want to be in candidates, doing some vetting and research for them. We're running our endorsement process, and then any events that might happen around candidates is another portion that sort of falls onto their area. Dave, are you ready to go?
Yep. Can I get a thumbs up from somebody if you guys can hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Excellent. Next slide, please. Okay. So I'm going to give you a few statistics of where we're at on the endorsement process. But first, I wanted to give you guys a little bit of background on why we're endorsing candidates. It seems odd we're trying to form a third party, and yet we're out there endorsing candidates that are part of the other parties. And a great way to take a look at that is if you notice that QR code down in the lower right-hand corner of this slide. If you guys grab that, that'll take you up to a reel that our communications team created just recently and put out on social media. You can take a look at that, and it gives you a very well-rounded explanation of what happens there. I'll give you my own personal story as to how I got here and why. I was a Fed for 15 years and did an early retirement this past March, so it's been just over a year now. And over that 15 years, I saw the federal government degrade into more and more dysfunction over time as the two parties sort of ran in their opposite directions. So after I retired, I decided I wanted to get involved in an organization to help fix that. That took me to Forward. Frankly, I got involved in the candidates committee because I wanted to inform myself better when I walked into the voting booth and cast my own ballot. But you know, what's really been phenomenal is I've met some amazing people all across the state. You're seeing just a handful of them listed down below. These people truly want to make government work, and they're coming from all sides of the political spectrum, and they're trying to listen to their constituents and make things work. So it's sort of renewed my faith in the whole process and the system. So going through the stats real quick, you can see we've got 5 candidates that we've officially announced their endorsement. They're listed down at the bottom, and you can take a look. There's several that are in the announcement process, so you're going to be seeing those come out over the next week or two. A few that the board is voting on and confirming that we actually want to endorse, and then we got a bunch that we're still researching. And I can tell you these numbers change constantly. We get candidates from our own individual research. We get candidates referred to us from board members. We get candidates that are referred to us from other candidates. So literally anybody that comes up with somebody and says, hey, you might want to take a look at this person, we go ahead and do that. Next slide, please. So once we go through the endorsement process, what's going to happen? Well, as you guys know, we're coming up on a primary, but we're not going to stop there. So once we get through the primary, then we have to turn our attention to the general election. Obviously, not all the candidates that we're endorsing within the primary are going to make it through. So we're going to sort of readdress that after the primaries and figure out who else we need to go through and talk to. As an example, there's a number of candidates that the legislative team I'm sorry, I said that wrong. There's a number of people in the legislature that the legislative team is working with that are also running for re-election. We're going to go back and take a look at those incumbents, assuming that they make it through the primary, and look at endorsing them going forward. So what happens once we endorse somebody? The first one that we do is we collaborate with the communications team. Courtney talked about this a little bit earlier. There's sort of 3 main things that happen. There is a website update. So if you got to Maryland Forward Party and take a look at our candidates page, you'll see there's a bunch of candidates that are announced down there. And you can read more about them on that page. Then after that's updated, usually a few days after, the social media posts start rolling out. And I will tell you guys, so Courtney made a plug earlier for you to follow them and take a look at things and repost. I would encourage you to do that, especially on the endorsed candidates. It's amazing to me the amount of activity. I'm not a big social media person, and yet I've been reposting this stuff and sharing it and commenting on things and liking them, and the amount of activity that I'm getting going on my own social media accounts is pretty amazing. So people are picking up on this, and it doesn't take very long for folks in other communities to see them as well. So even though I've not spent much time down in Worcester County, as soon as we start announcing candidates, I would almost guarantee you that 2 or 3 levels removed from me, there's people that are going to see that when I share it on social media. So I would encourage you guys to do that as well. Email blasts. So we're going to start targeting emails out to all of our supporters within the various counties and districts that these folks are a part of, and make sure that they know the candidates are endorsed, so that hopefully they can support them when they vote. The other thing is we work with our county teams to try to find volunteers that can help support these guys. So if they have events that they want to go to, maybe some help door knocking, if they do phone banks, whatever the support we can provide to the candidate, we'll attempt to do that as well. And we work through our county lead teams to do that. Finally, after the election, regardless of how a given election turns out, we're going to collaborate with these candidates going forward. Some of them, I'm sure, once we have our own ballot access, will be interested in switching over and potentially running under a forward party line. And if not, they can help us get our word out to the other candidates, the other people on their mailing list that support them. So that's what we're up to. Thanks, Pete.
Thank you, Dave. Okay, legislative affairs is up next. So Lee and his team are spending a lot of time looking through legislation that's happening out there, so that we can take some approaches and advocacy for or against. And they are also responsible for any legislatively sponsored events that may need to run, like everybody, let's go down to Annapolis and sit in front of the council and let them know that we care about this bill. Lee, are you all set to go?
Sure. So this year, we have a half dozen or so people, and what we did this year was based on, which was actually the first year I was involved, and the first year we probably did it to this extent, was picking up on our four primary pillars, that being independent registering commissions, single primaries or opening primaries in our case in general, ranked choice voting, and special elections for vacancies. We were chasing most of those this year, picking up on bills as they dropped, figuring out who was doing it, figuring out who was supporting it, who was sponsoring it, who was co-sponsoring it, running them down, and then trying to help. And we learned a lot. So what we're thinking next year is we want to follow up with the legislatures who sponsored and co-sponsored that legislation we supported this year. And then we need to look further ahead. So 2030 is a pretty good spot to look, because there's a census going to be done in 2030. There's going to be another redistricting effort done. And so what is our top priority getting there? And then to develop coalition of folks like we did this year for one particular issue, which was trying to open up primaries. Legislatures, organizations, and hopefully donors would support that priority. And then start now lobbying to produce something by 2030, keeping in mind that we have 27, 28, 29, and 30, actually. So we have 4 sessions. And then support, and then there's secondary priorities too. I mean, there are a lot of bills. There's so many bills that are worthy, but it's just a matter of time. Time management and you know, essentially, well, effort. So we're interested in, we need help from pretty much anybody who likes to read and write and research. And it's great to have a law background, but most of us don't. We have one attorney on the team. We have one individual with political experience. We have other people who don't, but it's mostly being willing to do those things. And then what a couple of us have spent a lot of time doing is just getting around to offices once the legislature's in session, getting to know them, letting them get to know us, letting them get to know what we're about, and providing information between offices, essentially trying to becoming part of the woodwork and becoming essentially the grease that helps move things along. So that's pretty much it. Of course, when we say what's our top priority, we're going to follow Pete's rule and say what's the biggest problem.
I like that rule. All right. So our last but not least, but probably one of our most important, is the party building. How do we get ourselves to party status? So the lead for this is Matt Byers. So his focus is on building out our membership, signature collection, as we go about doing that. How do we get to ballot access? And if we need to run any events to get us there, what's the best way to do so? All right, Matt, are you ready?
Yeah, Pete, thanks very much. As I said in the past, many of you have heard me in the past. Many of you probably haven't, but we're trying to change the way that we do politics, particularly in Maryland. And as part of that, we need to start with ourselves and not make the same mistakes everyone else has. So right now, we're not a political party. We're building toward becoming one, but we're not a political party yet. But that does raise an important question. So when we get there, what do we actually look like? That's what this party building committee is about. We're designing what the forward party becomes after we achieve official party status. And so there's 3 core things we're going to focus on to start. Pete mentioned some other things, but we're going to start here because we're not quite ready to do signature collection yet and all that other kind of stuff, but we do have some work to do before we get there. So first is building the structure. What does a real political party look like? I'm not quite sure yet. Not many of us are actually politicians and have been active in political parties. So we need to find out. Second, we need to define how we're going to operate. What's our leadership look like? What's our governance look like? What's our transparency look like? Not just what we believe, but how we function. And third, creating something different. What does that mean? Well, we know we don't want to be Democrat. We know we don't want to be Republicans. So what does it mean to be forward? What really is interesting here is that, most parties have evolved over 100 years or so. We get to design ours intentionally. And so this is kind of a really rare opportunity. And so I'm looking forward to working with some folks on this. We could go to the next slide, please. All right, so what we're doing now, what does it look like in practice? First, we're going to start with learning. We're going to learn and look at existing party structures, what works, what doesn't, what aligns with our values. Once we've done a little bit of research on that, we'll move on to phase 2, where we move into the design. We build some governance, some membership models, systems that are transparent from the bottom up. Obviously, we're not going to be dictating this as a committee. We're going to bring this to the larger board and everything, but the idea's got to start somewhere. So we're not just copying what exists, we're deciding what should exist. Because if we get this right, we don't just become another party. We build a better system for representation. And so right now, this committee is just getting started, which means there's a real opportunity to shape this from the ground up. I'm looking for people who want to build organizations, do research on what works, and help design something new. So if you've ever wanted to fix the system, this is where you do it. Thanks.
Thank you, Matt. All right, Bill, did you want to address some of the fundraising?
Thanks, Pete. So fundraising is not a committee yet. It's going to be an important part of what we do. And we've pretty much established to get the signatures we need, we're going to have to get a partner to help us do that and to do it professionally as opposed to just trying to do it ourselves. So what we're doing is a set of experiments to get some good metrics, get some good understanding of what's the best way for us to raise the money we need to accomplish the things that we need to do. And our goal is to raise $100,000. But we're going to do a set of 4 experiments that will help us really understand the best way to make that happen. And I don't think it's going to be one of the 4. I think it's going to be a combination. But we're going to learn an awful lot. And not only are we going to learn about talking to people about, supporting us financially, but we want to talk to those same people about being members of our party. So expanding our network and our reach. And what are those people interested in, and how we have the kind of conversations PJ talked about with them about their problems and the things they're looking for, and how we can, as a party, represent them as part of that. So the 4 experiments we're going to do, the first is to really make sure we've got internal systems working well, and if somebody wants to make a donation, it's really easy. So we're going to reach out to our prospects and supporters, much as we reached out to you to join this meeting. We're going to be doing a similar email request out to you will you help us with some money, some seed money to do some of the things that we want to, and in making those donations that we have things that are working right, we're capturing the information right, we're capturing the metrics to learn our lessons as what's happening as part of that. And we're really hoping that you'll see that email sometime in April from us. The second experiment is probably the biggest one, and potentially, can be very meaningful for us in a number of different ways. We believe the primary target that should be most interested in joining us and making Maryland a significant political party in the state of Maryland are the people who left the Democrats and Republicans because they were frustrated, and they're now independent or unaffiliated. So we plan to purchase a list of 24,000. There's about 1 million of those folks in that category now. We found a company that's got a mailing list with email addresses for 2/3 of that list. And we're going to get a sample of about 5% of that, 24,000. And we're going to reach out to them, introducing ourselves and asking them to support us as part of this. And we're going to send a couple of different messages to them. So the people in Montgomery County, which have the most independents and unaffiliated in all of Maryland, will have a message talking about things happening in Montgomery County, and in PG County and in Anne Arundel County. So we're looking at least the top 4 and 6,000 to each, maybe 5 or 6, and 6 would do 4,000 to each of those. And from that, we're going to get an awful lot of metrics. With an email campaign, you look at clicks, who opened the email, who clicked, who donated, how much did they donate, did they go to the website, what else did they do as part of that? And we'll be able to compare that information with the clicks and opens and donations we got in the first experiment. And the folks who really don't know us well, how different are they reacting to us from the folks who do know us a little bit as part of that. We're also going to, increasingly more people, email is not their primary form of communication. I joke, if I want any of my grandkids to read an email, I have to send them a text message telling them I sent them an email. So, we're going to send a text message to those folks. Hey, we sent you an email yesterday about helping us. Take a look at it, or just click here to come to our website and see what we want to do. And we'll also measure how responsive people are to the email versus the text message. We're going to learn an awful lot from that. A rule of thumb in cold email blasts, if you get 0.5% giving you something, that's damn good. Okay. If we get 0.5% giving us $10, we'll cover the cost of doing this. Okay. But if we get more than that, that will establish that it makes sense for us to get the money to go to all 650,000 out there, and give them a chance to support us. And that can be really significant, and getting us to that $100,000 that we need. But we're not going to make that decision unless we've got hard numbers that say, based on this sample, there's a real good chance that you would have this kind of success going to that larger group. So we're going step by step and kind of proving things. But the lessons that we're going to learn from this are what messages are most successful. And we feed that over to Courtney and the social media folks to help do that. And when we have events and getting people to come to the events, we'll be doing the same thing. So we're going to learn an awful lot from this. And we may learn that we can accelerate getting to that money by having the right message going to that large audience of the independents and the unaffiliated voters. Our third experiment is to go on the coattails a little bit of Andrew Yang, and the founder of the Forward Party. He has a website. There's about 27,000 people in Maryland who follow him. And we're reaching out to Andrew. Well, he basically asked those folks to help us and make a donation to help us make the Forward Party very significant in Maryland. So that's another way that we're talking to a different group and get some support from them. And then the last thing we're doing is what extent we should be doing some face-to-face requests for money from people more affluent, able to do that. So we've got 2 of our volunteers who are digging into databases and websites that have this information to come up with who are the Maryland folks who have made donations, at least $500 or more to political candidates, and of those, who candidate do they support? If it was Donald Trump, I don't know if they're going to be too interested in us. If it was as Senator Hogan, they might be more interested in talking to us because we share a lot of values as part of that. So we'll look, can we come up with a good list? And then a number of us will each take 5 or 6, reach to those people, have a cup of coffee or a glass of wine with them and talk about what we're doing and can they help us, and would they write a little bit larger check if they're willing to do that. And again, it's a research project. We'll see what happens as part of that. The goal is to come out of this with a plan that's going to get us the money to be the political party. And well, Matt Byers is building us, putting us in the right structure and plan and organization to do that. We're going to provide the money to get us there and be able to be talking to people about registering as members and looking at the candidates we're putting on the ballot as part of that. So that's what we're doing to build a strong case for this is the way we're going to achieve our goal.
All right. Thanks, Bill. Yeah, and one of the things that we just want to emphasize, going back to this experiment language, is we want to be good fiscal stewards of your time and your money, you know, as volunteers, as donors or potential donors. And it's not that we're going to do all 4 of these things, but we're going to do the first one, get it right. Then that unlocks our ability to do number 2. And once we figure out the best way to do that, then we'll move on to number 3. So that at each point and step along the way for not only this one, but for everything that we do, we make sure that we are making the best use of all of our resources, all of our people, and all of the great ideas that we have inside of the party. All right, and we're coming to the end of this here. So if you want to find out more about the Maryland Forward Party, you can check us out at the website, marylandforwardparty.com. Or you can also send an email over to Bill here at bills.fwd@gmail.com. And he'll be happy to get you set up for an introductory call.
You know, I've put that into chat as well, so you can copy that. And it's a conversation. It's not a sales call. I'm not going to talk to you in anything, but tell you what we're doing, tell you where we need some help. And if there's something that's interesting you want to get involved with, love to have that conversation with you. You heard a lot of us talk about what we're trying to do and things in our organization. If you'd like to know more about that, let me know, and I can get you in touch with the right people to have a conversation and see if this is something that makes sense to you or not. And if we go to the next slide, Pete.
I'm sorry, we have a hand up from Oliver.
Oh, sorry, thanks. Yes, Oliver, go ahead.
Yeah, hi, Bill. Thanks. I got in touch with you, I think, last year, maybe 3rd or 4th quarter, and I've chatted with PJ, and Courtney's reached out to me. But I'd really like to get to an event. There've been only a couple really that I'm aware of. I'm in Bethesda, and there haven't been any that have been terribly close. I think there was one in Gaithersburg or something, but I really think and they don't, they can just be meetups or whatever, but I think getting more of that personal interaction and chatting and building really a network of friendship to help germinate this whole thing, and then be able to reach out to our own individual respective networks to see who's interested. I mean, down here where I am, it's pretty blue. But I want to talk about this with people, but I don't push it, because if they got interested, I guess I would refer them to you, Bill. But I think if we can do something a little more regularly in terms of getting together, and then have that opportunity to invite people who you may talk to that may be interested, just to really get grassroots. That seems like where we are right now, this size would be really great for that. Would I like to host an event? I suppose. I hope more than 3 people showed up, but because nobody knows me at this point.
Yeah,
So,
Oliver, sorry to interrupt. The way we usually do this is somebody picks a spot and we advertise it, and whoever shows up, shows up. So you get more than 3 people, great. Some of us will show up, but that's not that far away.
clearly I'm managing my own expectations with 3 people. but hopefully it would be more than that. And, you know, the venue somewhere where you can actually have conversations and you're not just kind of jammed into a bar area. But that's one thing. The other thing is I would be, and I need to circle back up with Courtney on this, but figuring out sort of some kind of succinct messaging. I'm what I'd call an organic libertarian. I was part of the Libertarian Party till I got the letter that said that they've been disbanded. But something like, if someone said to me, what's forward, you know, what are they about? And, you know, you want to be able to say something it's more than, it's between, you know, Democrats and Republicans, but, you know, I like to say my political philosophy. So it's a philosophical thing that I think we should have a very succinct message for. If this is the message for me, I like the idea of this is a party that believes in the idea of liberty as a general principle, whereas the Democrats and Republicans want to dictate, you know, either your economic circumstances or your social circumstances. And I think that liberty should be a general principle on both fronts, as long as you're respectful of other people and so forth. So that's just my kind of 2 cents here, and hopefully have a chance soon to meet more of you. And we'll think about trying to host an event. And would I just put that through Bill or PJ or, you know?
Yeah, obviously reach out to me and we're doing the same thing tomorrow. Somebody in Anne Arundel County wanted to put something together, and we've worked with them to set up a meetup happy hour tomorrow in Anne Arundel. So we can do the same thing.
Well,
All right.
PJ, we have county leads here, right?
Yeah, so
In Montgomery County.
Laura's the county lead here in Montgomery County. I'm in Montgomery County too. So Laura and I will reach out to you, get on the phone, chat for a little bit, talk about, you know, where it might make sense, and try and do that. You know, in a second, I'm going to talk about our next month's meeting, but the May meeting that we have in mind is all about what's our position on different things and how to respond with what's the board, you know, about Gaza or about abortion or about, you know, about anything. So,
Yeah.
so coming up with
I think
really
that's good to have.
interesting. So a couple of things that help you, but let's keep the dialogue going, and I'll reach out to you, Oliver, to start that discussion.
Okay. Sounds great. Thanks.
Yeah. I just want to add logistically, let's go through this. Actually is our last slide. So let's close out this last slide and then hop right into these conversations. And I think we'll turn off the recording as we get into the Q&A portion of it. So Bill, do you want to give the last pitch here for this, and then we will turn off the recording and have some more good discussions.
Yeah. So our next meeting is going to be all about our candidates. And Dave, who talked about the candidate meeting, is going to be running this. He's going to introduce some of those candidates, talking about who have made a decision to endorse, and just, you know, as we get up close to the primaries, we want you to know who are the people that we're supporting and endorsing, and about the process and all of that. So it could be very interesting, I think, to do that. And Laura will be getting out more information about that. You've got the date here, 22nd. So, you know, 4 weeks from today, we're going to be doing that.
Fantastic. All right. Do you want to hit that stop button there, Bill?
Yep.
And thank you everybody for coming and watching, and we'll see you at the next events.